He was never allowed to play because of his disability, until a human made him team captain. This emotional sci-fi story about a disabled alien student, an Earth mentor, and a zero-gravity sport begins in the silent metal veins of Orbital Academy Kidaris, where the stars looked close enough to touch and yet felt impossibly far away. Thrrell hovered alone at the edge of the recreation dome, his chair humming softly beneath him. His lower limbs, useless since birth, lay strapped in a standard-issue support braces that never quite fit right. The Zelthian system was famous across the Galactic Coalition for regeneration. Broken bones reknit, shredded tissue grew back, whole limbs reformed in weeks. They were the doctors of the stars, the healers everyone called when miracles were needed. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Everyone except Thrrell. He had been born without the regenerative trait, a genetic glitch in a culture that worshipped physical perfection. On a world where even losing an arm was considered an inconvenience, his unfixable disability was an embarrassment, a flaw, an unspoken stain on a proud medical dynasty. The Academy's official records called it non-regenerative anomaly. The students had a shorter term, cripple. Out on the zero-gravity court, classmates in sleek training gear shot through the air like comets, playing Cosmic Chase, the most popular competitive sport in the Coalition. The luminescent game sphere flickered between them as they ricocheted through invisible gravity wells, banking off shifting fields, twisting, flipping, laughing. Thrrell watched from his usual place beside the barrier, fingers moving quickly over his data tablet. Observation is a form of participation, Thrrell, Professor Vantak said, his voice carrying the bland warmth of Academy programming. Watch patterns. You will still learn. Yes, Professor, Thrrell answered, his tone respectful and quiet, violet eyes never leaving the game. The recreation dome's transparent ceiling revealed the scattered diamonds of nearby stars and the pale glimmer of the Academy's host world below. Orbital Academy Kidaris floated at the edge of Zelthian space, a shining testament to cooperation, its corridors filled with students from dozens of species. Yet Thrrell had never felt more alone. His tablet flashed as he mapped trajectories, predicted passes, and calculated optimal paths through the variable gravity zones. He marked tendencies. Marvik favored high arc throws through low G pockets. Secondary defenders drifted half a second late. The team's formation unbalanced whenever the sphere cut left through Sector Delta. Numbers gave shape to chaos. Strategy turned his isolation into something that felt almost like control. A shadow fell across his screen. Pathetic, a familiar voice sneered. Thrrell's antennae drooped. He didn't need to look up to know who stood behind him. Marvik, top athlete of the Academy, future elite forces recruit, and his most persistent tormentor, leaned over the hover chair with casual cruelty. You should be grateful they even let you attend, Marvik said, violet eyes sharp with disdain. His antennae flicked in a way that would have been considered elegant in anyone else. A Zelthian who can't even stand? You're a walking, he smirked, correcting himself with a mock cough, floating embarrassment. Thrrell fought the urge to curl in on himself. My academic scores mean nothing if you can't take the field, Marvik cut in. The chime ending recreation echoed through the dome, and students drifted toward the exits, chatter fading into disciplined silence. Marvik made a show of stretching, then accidentally bumped Thrrell's chair hard. The tablet slipped from Thrrell's fingers, clattering to the floor. See you tomorrow, cripple, Marvik said pleasantly, already turning away to rejoin his laughing teammates. Thrrell waited until the dome emptied before engaging the hover chair. The motor whined as he edged forward, leaned awkwardly, and retrieved the fallen tablet. The screen was cracked now, a spiderweb of fractures distorting his carefully plotted lines. His throat tightened. It had taken him weeks to refine that simulation. He slid the damaged device into his bag and guided his chair into the corridor. The Academy's architecture was all graceful arcs and precise angles, structured to give the illusion of constant motion, designed to inspire. To Thrrell, it only underlined what he couldn't do, run, jump, drift through the air on his own power. He'd learned the exact timing of traffic patterns to avoid being jostled. He knew which sections were quiet enough that no one would notice if he stalled and let his frustration burn out in silence. His dormitory lay in a remote wing, a special accommodation that really just meant he had farther to travel than everyone else. The door hissed open to his tiny room, where neat shelves lined the walls and delicate models of Coalition ships hung from the ceiling. Each hull, each engine assembly, each microscopic thruster nozzle had been assembled by his careful hands. Here, at least, nothing called him cripple. He transferred from chair to bed with practiced motions. The braces reshaped automatically, supporting his legs in a more comfortable angle. Thrrell pulled out the damage tablet and tried to salvage the data, ignoring the way the jagged lines across the screen mirrored the fractures in his own mood. The Academy's central system chimed, and Headmistress Solera's voice filled the room. Attention, students of Orbital Academy Kidaris. Tomorrow morning, we will welcome a diplomatic delegation from Earth as part of our ongoing cultural exchange. A human educator will be embedded with our institution for 1 standard month. All students are required to attend the welcoming ceremony at 0800 in the main assembly hall. That is all. Thrrell froze, antennae lifting despite himself. Humans. They were still new to the Coalition, physically fragile, with no regeneration, no telepathy, no claws or carapaces or venom. Yet somehow, in barely 70 years, they had gone from isolated homeworld to faster-than-light travelers, dragging their messy history and stubborn determination into the stars. He had devoured every accessible file on Earth. Stories of their wars, their art, their social systems that made room, even if imperfectly, for those with bodies like his. Human disability stories weren't about shame. They were about adaptation, technology, stubbornness turned into strength. On nights when the Academy's silence pressed too heavily on his chest, he imagined what it would be like to live on a world where the default response to difference wasn't discussed. Maybe, he thought now, watching the message icon blink, a human educator would understand something no Zelthian ever had. Maybe someone who grew up fragile would see him as more than a mistake. The next morning, Thrrell arrived early at the assembly hall and parked his hoverchair near the back, out of the main sight lines, but with a clear view of the stage. The hall buzzed with layered languages and nervous whispers. Antennae and tentacles and bioluminescent frills shifted as students craned to see the dignitaries. Headmistress Solera stepped to the central platform, every line of her posture radiating faultless control. "Students," she began, voice carried by the hall's amplifiers, "Orbital Academy Kidaris is honored to continue our tradition of cross-species cooperation. Ambassador _Thrrell of the Zelthian Diplomatic Corps will now introduce our guest from Earth." Ambassador _Thrrell glided forward, tall and flawlessly composed in diplomatic regalia. After the formal bow, she spoke in smooth, rehearsed tones about cooperation, understanding, and the importance of shared educational values. Then she said, "It is my privilege to introduce educator Michael Chun of Earth's Educational Cooperative." Thrrell leaned forward. The human who stepped into the light was shorter than most Zelthians, with no antennae, only a cap of dark hair and expressive brown eyes that swept across the hall with open curiosity. His skin glowed a warm brown under the lights, and the faint lines at the corners of his eyes deepened when he smiled. "Greetings, students of Kidaris," he said, his voice deeper and rougher than Zelthian tones, but pleasant. "Thank you for welcoming me to your academy. Earth may be new to the Galactic Coalition, but education is something we've wrestled with for thousands of years. I'm here to observe, to share, and hopefully to learn from you." Standard diplomatic words, Thrrell thought, yet something in the way he said them felt different, less scripted, less cold. The assembly ended with the usual formalities. Students filed out in neat lines toward their first classes. Thrrell activated his hover chair, intending to merge into the flow before the corridors got too crowded. "Excuse me." The single phrase cut through the noise. Thrrell turned. Educator Michael Chun was walking toward him, weaving smoothly through students until he stopped beside the hover chair. Up close, his eyes were even warmer, reflecting not pity, but something Thrrell had almost never seen directed at him. Interest. "I hope I'm not interrupting," the human said. "You're Thrrell, correct?" Threll's antennae flicked in startled confusion. "Yes, Educator-chan. I am Thrrell. Michael is fine outside ceremonies," the human said lightly. "Would you mind if I asked you a few questions about your experience here? I like to speak with individual students, not just read reports." Threll's first instinct was to deflect. "My experience is not typical. I do not participate in most physical activities. Observation is considered a form of participation," Michael finished gently. "I heard your professor say that yesterday. I'm especially interested in perspectives that don't fit the standard pattern. If you're willing, perhaps we could talk during the midday meal?" Thrrell stared. Instructors spoke to him when they had to, not because they wanted to. Conference invitations were for star athletes and brilliant telepaths, not the boy in the hover chair at the edge of the room. His antennae twitched nervously. "If it would be useful, I will answer your questions." "Thank you," Michael said with clear sincerity, as if Thrrell had done him a favor instead of the other way around. "I'll look for you in the dining hall." The first period chime saved Thrrell from having to say more. He nodded stiffly and guided his chair toward the theoretical astrophysics wing, heart pounding harder than it ever had during an exam. Through advanced equations and stellar formation simulations, his thoughts kept drifting back to the human's eyes, the way they had focused on him instead of sliding past. Midday came too quickly. Thrrell hovered just outside the dining hall doors, suddenly certain that Michael had only been polite, that a dozen obligations had already erased the casual promise. The smell of nutrient stews and spiced roots drifted out, along with the buzz of conversation and the occasional derisive snicker as students noticed him lurking. He was about to retreat to his dorm and eat alone when he heard his name called in that deep human voice. "Thrrell, there you are." Michael emerged from the crowd balancing a tray loaded with various dishes, some Zelthian, some clearly altered for human digestion. "I've been looking for you," he said easily. "They've given me a private dining room near the hall. Would you join me? Being a visiting dignitary is surprisingly lonely." The joke caught Thrrell off guard, drawing a small, startled flick of his antennae that was almost a laugh. "I have not yet collected my meal," he managed. "Then we'll fix that." Michael gestured toward the service panel. "What do you like?" Thrrell answered automatically. "Standard protein supplement and vegetable composite are adequate." Michael gave him a look that managed to be both amused and concerned. "That sounds like something you endure, not enjoy. Is there anything on the menu you actually like?" Thrrell hesitated, embarrassed by the smallness of the desire. "On celebration days, they serve sweet tuber pudding. It is pleasant, but such items are not normally available." "Today is special," Michael said. "First human Zelthian student meeting in this academy, right? Sounds celebration-worthy to me." He tapped the panel, navigating through options with quick familiarity. Moments later, a tray emerged for Thrrell. "Standard meal?" "Yes, but also a small bowl of bright orange tuber pudding." "For you," Michael said simply. Threll's throat tightened. No one had made a fuss about what he liked since he was a child. Meals had become another exercise in efficiency and accommodation, not enjoyment. "Thank you," he said softly. They ate facing each other across the small room's narrow table. Michael asked about classes, about the curriculum, about how Zelthians structured their education. At first, Thrrell answered in careful, clipped phrases. But the human's questions didn't prod at his disability as if it were the most interesting thing about him. Instead, Michael kept circling back to his interests. "You mentioned theoretical astrophysics," he said at one point. "Your understanding seems pretty advanced for your year level. Have you thought about specializing?" Threll's antennae drooped. "Such paths require field work and lab rotations. I'm classified as exempt for most practical modules. My placement options are limited." "Exempt is an excuse," Michael asked slowly, "and nothing is provided instead?" "There are standardized assessments," Thrrell explained. "Modifying them for individuals will be considered unfair." Administrative positions accept exempt classifications. It is an honorable assignment. But not the one you want, Michael guessed gently. Thrrell did not answer, but his antennae said enough. On Earth, Michael said, we've learned, slowly, that standard isn't neutral. It's just whoever built the system. We design labs, workplaces, even sports to include people with different bodies and senses. Not perfectly, not everywhere, but the idea is spreading. Some of our best scientists work from chairs like yours. Some never saw their research subjects with their own eyes. Thrrell's mind snagged on that image. Scientists in chairs, not despite their chairs, but simply because that was how their bodies moved through the world. No shame. No constant, crushing expectation to be fixed. Humans are fragile, he said carefully. Yet you reached the stars. Michael smiled. We are physically, so we compensate with tools, planning, and a lot of stubborn group projects. The important thing is that fragility didn't stop us from trying. That's why I notice people like you, Thrrell. People who keep engaging, even when the system wasn't built for them. The meal chime announced the end of the break. Thrrell startled. He hadn't realized how much time had passed. What's next on your schedule? Michael asked. Physical education, Thrrell said, bitterness leaking into his voice before he could stop it. I attend and observe. My participation score is marked accordingly. Michael's brows pulled together. May I observe that class with you? It would be useful to see how your academy handles physical instruction. If anyone else had said it, Thrrell might have heard mockery. For Michael, it sounded like what it was, honest curiosity. Of course, he said, if you stay near me, you will have an adequate view. And for the first time, the idea of observation didn't feel like a cage. It felt like the beginning of something he did not yet have a name for. The physical education dome thrummed with energy when they arrived. Students floated in warm-up patterns, stretching limbs, flexing wings, adjusting grab boots. The environment system hummed as it cycled through settings, tuning gravity wells and air density for the afternoon session of cosmic chase training. Thrrell steered his hover chair to his usual place at the edge of the field, near a bench bolted to the floor. Michael ignored the instructor's platform and sat right beside him, elbows resting on his knees, eyes alert. Is this where you always sit? The human asked. Yes, Thrrell said. It keeps me out of the way. And what do you do while you observe? Michael's tone carried no judgment, only interest. Thrrell hesitated, then pulled out his cracked tablet. I analyzed play patterns, trajectories, weaknesses in formations. It passes the time. Michael took the device carefully, examining the fractured display without comment on the damage. Lines of code, graphs, and color-coded paths filled the view. This is more than passing time, he said. You're tracking individual tendencies, gravity transitions, response delays. It is nothing official, Thrrell said quickly, antennae flattening in embarrassment. Professors prefer results from those who can actually play. Strategy from a crippled observer is not useful. In my experience, Michael said quietly, some of the best coaches are the ones who spend time on the sidelines. Distance gives perspective. Before Thrrell could respond, Professor Nick strode into the dome, his athletic build and perfect posture the very picture of Zelthian physical ideals. His voice snapped across the space. Form up. Today we will focus on advanced gravity transitions in cosmic chase, the Coalition's premier zero-gravity sport. You will demonstrate control, power, and precision. He reached their side, antennae flicking slightly when he saw Michael sitting beside Thrrell instead of on the elevated instructor's perch. Educator Chun, Nick said, projecting respect. We are honored by your presence. The instructor platform offers a superior angle for observation. Thank you, Michael replied politely. For my research today, I'd prefer to remain with Thrrell. I'm particularly interested in student perspectives. The professor paused, clearly uncomfortable, but forced a nod. As you wish. Thrrell may remain in his usual observation spot. As students floated into teams, the dome lights shifted. Gravity wells pulsed faintly, invisible wells of force mapping the court like hidden currents beneath a calm sea. The luminescent game sphere flickered into existence at the center, casting pale light across faces taut with competitive focus. "Watch the central formation," Michael murmured. "Is that Marvik again?" "Yes," Thrrell said, his fingers moving reflexively across the tablet as he began a new dataset. "He favors a stable core with rotating support. Effective, but predictable. His physical strength covers most tactical weaknesses." On the field, Marvik launched himself through a low-gravity lane, muscles rippling as he twisted midair, intercepting the sphere and snapping it toward a teammate in one smooth, efficient arc. Students in the stands cheered. "Impressive," Michael said thoughtfully. But if the opposing team recognized that pattern, Thrrell's antennae angled toward him in surprise. "They could use the high-gravity cluster here as an anchor," he said quickly, bringing up a 3D model on the tablet. "Shift defenders to these coordinates and force early passes. It would disrupt his preferred route." "Have you shown this to anyone?" Michael asked. Thrrell's antennae drooped. "No one has asked. And if I offered, Marvik would not appreciate it." On the field, the match ended with Marvik's team predictably victorious. Nix barked critique and praise in equal measure, never glancing once toward the boy in the hover chair who had just mapped out how to beat his star player. Class concluded. Students drifted toward the exits in loose clusters. Michael stood and stretched as Thrrell powered down his tablet. "Thank you for letting me share your vantage point," the human said. "It's been illuminating." "You are welcome, Edu." "Michael," Thrrell replied, antennae lifting at the informal name. He turned his chair toward the exit, only to find his path blocked by a familiar cluster of athletic bodies. Marvik stood at the center, antennae angled in calculated politeness. "Educator Chun," Marvik said in smooth, public performance tones. "If you wish to see true excellence, my team would be honored to demonstrate advanced techniques during free period. The instructor platform will give you the best view." The insult was shaped like an invitation, all sharp edges wrapped in pleasant words. Thrrell's hands tightened on the controls. He had been through this dance before. The public dismissal, the reminder that his place was at the edge of things. Michael smiled pleasantly. "I appreciate the offer," he said, "but I've already arranged to continue my discussion with Thrrell. His analysis of your training is extremely valuable to my research." Marvik's composure cracked for a heartbeat. His gaze flicked to Thrrell, recalibrating. "With respect, educator, Thrrell's experience is exceptional," Marvik said carefully. "Not representative of our Academy's highest standards." "Which is why," Michael replied smoothly, "it's vital for my comparative study. Standard excellence is easy to measure. Systems' weaknesses often appear where they least expect scrutiny." Gasps and whispers rippled through nearby students. Marvik's antennae stiffened, then eased into something that looked very much like forced neutrality. "As you wish," he said, stepping aside. "Our offer stands should you change your mind." Thrrell barely breathed until they were in the corridor. "You did not need to say that," he blurted. "They will resent you choosing my company." Michael gave him a sideways look. "They'll recover. Besides, I didn't choose out of charity, Thrrell. I chose because what you're doing here with your tablet interests me." It was such a simple statement. Yet something in Thrrell's chest ached at the idea that someone had chosen his company without being forced by duty or pity. "Do you have any free time this evening?" Michael asked. "There's something related to Cosmic Chase I'd like to show you. Recreation Dome 3 during evening free period." Thrrell's first instinct was to decline. Every time he let himself hope, something cracked, like the spiderweb in his tablet screen. But curiosity, that stubborn ember that had survived years of quiet humiliation, flickered. "I will be there," he said. Evening cycle dimmed the Academy's primary corridors, shifting light toward the recreation sectors. Most students clustered in common rooms or study nooks at that hour, leaving the larger domes nearly empty. Thrrell guided his hover chair into Dome 3, its doors sliding shut behind him with a soft hiss. Inside, the lights were lowered around the edges but bright across the central field. Gravity wells hummed quietly at a low baseline setting. At the control station near the entrance, Michael stood with a smooth, spherical device floating beside him, smaller than a standard cosmic chase sphere, wrapped in a glowing blue field. Perfect timing, Michael said, waving him over. Welcome to tonight's experiment. Thrrell's antennae tilted in wary curiosity. What is that? A drone, Michael said. Adapted from Earth's adaptive sports technology. On my world, we use systems like this so people with spinal injuries or missing limbs can participate in games that used to be closed to them. He held up a sleek controller, its surface patterned with sensor pads and small joysticks. This one links directly to the drone's navigation. It responds to hand motion and bioelectric field feedback. I modified it to interface with Kidaris' gravity grids. Thrrell stared at the drone, then at the controller. You wish me to play Cosmic Chase, he said slowly, using that. If you're willing, Michael nodded. There won't be any opponents. No crowd. No scores. Just a practice course. No one needs to see except us. He gestured toward a series of glowing markers spaced throughout the dome, their positions aligned with different gravity fields. I've set up a simple track. The goal is to guide the drone through each marker without wiping out. If you hate it, we stop. Thrrell felt old, familiar voices rising in his head. This is pointless. You're exempt. Observation only. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't give them more to laugh at. Then another voice, quieter but stubborn, spoke up. He made Sweet Tuber pudding appear on a random day because you liked it. Maybe just once trust him. His fingers reached for the controller before his fear finished arguing. It may not work, he warned. Then we'll learn something anyway, Michael said. Take your time. The controller was lighter than it looked, warm under his hands as its sensors synced with his touch. The drone drifted toward him, responding to the link. Thrrell tilted the controller a fraction. The drone slid forward, its blue glow flaring slightly. He jerked his hands back on instinct. The drone stopped. You won't break it, Michael said reassuringly. Sensitivity is adjustable. Try smaller movements. Thrrell breathed in, out. Tilt. The drone eased forward, slower this time. Rotate. It spun gently. Tiny joystick adjustment. The sphere rose into the air, hovering at shoulder height. Something inside Thrrell's chest loosened. Movement. Response. Control. Not on a screen, not in a simulation. Out there, in the open space where Cosmic Chase lived. Good, Michael said quietly. Now aim for the first marker. The first glowing ring hovered only a few meters away in a low-grav pocket. Thrrell eased the drone forward. As it crossed the gravity boundary, its motion shifted, speed altering subtly. He compensated, adjusting angles based on years of watching other people misjudge those same zones. His hands knew what to do before his conscious mind caught up. The drone slipped cleanly through the ring. Thrrell's antennae shot upward. A strange, effervescent sensation bubbled in his chest. Again, he whispered. They ran the course once. Twice. 10 times. Michael adjusted the difficulty as Thrrell's control improved, layering more extreme gravity transitions, tighter turns, faster speeds. The drone responded to each new challenge like an extension of his intent. By the time they reached the highest setting, Thrrell's world had narrowed to the hum of the dome, the glow of the markers, and the feel of the controller thrumming under his fingers. The useless weight of his legs faded from awareness completely. For the first time in his life, he wasn't on the outside looking in. He was playing. When he skimmed the drone through the final ring of the most difficult course without a single collision, the dome systems chimed in automatic acknowledgement. Thrrell realized his antennae were standing at full stretch, a Zelthian signal that translated to every language in the coalition. Pure joy. That, he said, still catching his breath, even though his body hadn't moved more than a few centimeters, was fun. High praise, Michael chuckled. You handled the gravity transitions better than some elite players I've seen. Years of observation paid off. Thrrell looked down at the controller, then up at the hovering drone. I did not know such technology existed. Most people don't, Michael said. Adaptive systems rarely get the same funding as flashy new weapons. But the Coalition's Adaptive Technologies division is growing. And humans have a habit of turning accessibility tools into mainstream innovations. He disengaged the drone and dimmed the course markers. As the dome's lights eased toward low-power mode, his expression shifted from pleased to intent. "Thrrell," he said, "I have a proposal." Thrrell's antennae twitched warily. "A proposal?" "The cultural exchange program includes a demonstration event next week," Michael explained. "Think of it as a live showcase, sports, arts, tech from various worlds." I pitched the idea of an adaptive cosmic chase exhibition. The ambassador loved it. The headmistress agreed, as long as it didn't disrupt regular training. Thrrell felt a strange chill at the base of his neck. "And you require players." "I require a captain," Michael corrected. "A strategist who understands gravity fields, movement patterns, and can coordinate players using a drone interface." Thrrell stared. "You want me to captain a team?" "A mixed team," Michael said, warming to the vision. "Some young Zelthians who never make the primary roster. Some human junior diplomats who barely know which way is up in 0G. No pressure to win. The purpose is to demonstrate inclusion and innovation. You direct them, play via drone, and show the Academy and the Coalition that ability comes in more flavors than can jump highest." "They will never allow it," Thrrell said weakly. "Zelthian tradition." "Already checked," Michael said, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "The exhibition falls under diplomatic program authority, not standard physical education regulations." Ambassador Thrrell signed off this morning. Hope flared and fear strangled it before it fully formed. "And if I fail?" Thrrell whispered. "If I humiliate myself? Then the lesson will be that cripples play pretend games while real athletes compete." "If the team performs poorly," Michael said firmly, "we will still have proven that adaptive tech can get more people into the game. That alone would be worth it. But I don't think you'll fail, Thrrell. I think you'll surprise them. Maybe even surprise yourself." He rested a hand lightly on Thrrell's shoulder, the human gesture grounding him. "You can say no. This is your life, not my experiment. But if you say yes, you won't be standing alone out there." Thrrell closed his eyes. Images flashed past. Marvik's sneer, the word cripple echoing in corridors, the silent hours spent building ship models no one cared about, the cracked tablet full of unseen strategies. And then, the drone sliding smooth through gravity wells, the controller warm in his hands, Michael's voice saying you handled that better than elite players. He opened his eyes. "I will do it," he said, antennae trembling but lifted. "I will captain your team." Michael's answering smile held not triumph, but pride. "Excellent," he said. "Then, Captain Thrrell, let's build you a team." "Then, Captain Thrrell, let's build you a team." And before we dive into this next chapter of the story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me what world, country, or city you're watching from. It really helps support the channel and lets me see how far this story travels across the stars. Now, let's get back to Thrrell's journey, because everything was about to shift faster than a gravity field on maximum rotation. Thrrell sat frozen for a moment after Michael's words, the controller still warm in his hands, the drone hovering obediently behind him as if waiting for its new captain's first orders. The idea of leading a team, of being something other than the quiet observer in the corner, felt impossible. Yet the word captain echoed through him in a way nothing else ever had. His antennae trembled with a mix of fear and excitement as he followed Michael out of the recreation dome. The next day, the Academy whispered with rumors. Everyone seemed to know something unusual was happening. Some students glanced at Thrrell with confusion, others with poorly disguised amusement. The Zelthian elite team members watched him with the same curiosity one might give a malfunctioning training drone. Interesting for a moment, but ultimately harmless. Thrrell kept his gaze forward and tried not to let the murmurs sink into his skin, tried not to hear the old words, broken, useless, observer only, that clung to the recesses of his mind like sticky residue. Michael had arranged for their first team meeting in Recreation Dome 3 during evening free period. As Thrrell guided his hover chair inside, he saw 8 figures clustered under the central lighting. 3 Zelthian underclassmen and 5 humans wearing subtle diplomatic insignia. They all turned when he entered, and Thrrell's nerves flared so sharply his hands almost slipped on the chair's controls. "Captain Thrrell," Michael said with deliberate respect, standing as if announcing a veteran commander. "Your team awaits your guidance." The word struck Thrrell like a shockwave. He had been called many things in his life, most unwelcome, but never captain. He moved forward slowly, trying not to appear overwhelmed. The new data device Michael had provided hovered beside his chair, projecting soft displays of tactical interfaces he had spent the afternoon customizing. The team members waited silently, some curious, some nervous. Thrrell cleared his throat. "I thank you all for volunteering," he began, antennae twitching anxiously. "This exhibition is not a competition of strength, but of collaboration. Our differences may allow us to innovate where traditional teams do not." One human girl with dark, curly hair stepped forward. "I'm Sophia. We're all totally new to this game. So, we're counting on you to tell us what to do." Her honesty steadied him. Thrrell nodded and activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional projection of the cosmic chase arena unfolded above them, gravity wells pulsing in soft colors. "Our goal," Thrrell said, "is not to replicate the strategies of elite teams. Those rely heavily on physical prowess. Instead, we will emphasize positioning, timing, and predictive movement. Humans display higher spontaneous adaptability. Zelthians possess innate spatial awareness. Combined, these traits provide an unconventional advantage." The team leaned in as Thrrell explained formations beta and gamma, how each player's movement should complement another's. He assigned positions based on reflex assessments, balance tests, and the subtle cues he detected in their posture and voice. His analytical mind, long confined to simulations, now flowed outward into real application. The team listened, and asked questions not soaked in pity or mockery, but genuine curiosity. After nearly an hour of instruction, it was time to practice. Thrrell powered on his new drone controller. The drone synced instantly, floating to his side like an eager companion. Michael launched several practice drones controlled by basic AI routines, simulating a neutral opposing force. "Begin when ready," Michael said. The first attempt was chaos. A human collided with a Zelthian midair. Someone forgot which gravity well pulled upward. A drone spiraled out of control before Thrrell corralled it. Holographic markers flashed warnings. The team's laughter and groans filled the dome, but not in a mocking way. More like friends facing a challenge together for the first time. Thrrell watched, analyzing. Patterns began forming in his mind, the same way constellations emerge in a dark sky. He saw hesitation points, impulse habits, instinctive reactions. He adjusted their positions, refined a strategy, and offered small corrections. "Shift left early, Sophia. Good. Nares, pivot through the low G ring first. Human player 2, avoid cutting through that transition unless instructed." Slowly, the mismatched group found its rhythm. Human unpredictability created openings. Zelthian precision stabilized formations. And Thrrell, controlling his drone from the center, became the anchor around which everything moved. His drone darted, spun, feinted, creating distractions the others could exploit. They succeeded in completing a full coordinated maneuver. Then another, and another. When the session ended, sweat glistened on human faces, and Zelthians glowed with faint bioluminescent satisfaction. "That was incredible," Sophia said, breathing hard. "You actually made us feel like a real team." Thrrell's antennae lifted, warmth spreading through him. "We have far to improve," he said modestly, "but your progress is encouraging." After the others left, Thrrell and Michael reviewed performance data. The human nodded, clearly impressed. "You adapted strategies in real time," Michael said. "Textbook leaders rarely do that. You were meant for this." Thrrell felt the truth in the words pulse through him like a current. "It was exhilarating," he admitted. "I have imagined playing for so long, but this was different." Michael gave him a thoughtful look. "Thrrell, I haven't told you the full reason I wanted you to lead. Earth's adaptive technology programs are expanding. The Coalition is watching. Leaders who understand how to merge ability, tech, and strategy are rare. You might be the start of something bigger. Thrrell's heart fluttered. Something bigger. Beyond being the quiet observer. Beyond being the Academy's tolerated anomaly. For the first time, he felt like a spark had been placed in his chest, something that might ignite into a fire. But not everyone shared that excitement. The next afternoon, during meal period, Thrrell entered the dining hall and felt dozens of gazes lock onto him. Whispers followed him like shadows. A pair of older Zelthian students smirked as he passed. So the cripple thinks he's a captain now. Maybe he'll lead the team to a new record. Fastest collapse in Academy history. Thrrell kept his gaze lowered, focusing on his tray. Old instincts pushed him toward the quiet corner where he normally ate. But before he could reach it, Michael waved him over from a table in the central section, very publicly. "Thrrell," the human called cheerfully. "Sit with me. I want to discuss yesterday's strategies." Every head turned. Thrrell hesitated, but then moved forward, feeling every whisper prickle across his skin like static. He sat across from Michael, who continued speaking as if nothing were unusual. "You notice how the humans tend to oversteer in low-gravity zones? We can use that to our advantage if—" A loud cough interrupted him. Marvik stood behind Thrrell, arms folded, antennae angled with icy disdain. "Educator Chun," Marvik said smoothly, "I hope the Academy is compensating you extra for entertaining illusions. Because that is what this is. Illusion." Michael looked up slowly. "Is there something you wish to discuss, Marvik?" Marvik's gaze flicked to Thrrell. "I wish to caution you. The Academy has standards. Allowing someone like him to pretend at leadership dilutes those standards." Thrrell's fingers curled against his tray, but he forced himself to stay silent. Michael stood, eyes steady. "Marvik, let me ask you something. Have you ever been on a team led by Thrrell?" Marvik blinked. "Of course not. Have you ever watched him analyze your matches?" "Why would I?" "Then how?" Michael said sharply. "Do you presume to know what he is capable of?" The dining hall went silent. Marvik's mouth snapped closed, caught off guard by the human's tone. He glared at Thrrell, but something uncertain flickered in his eyes, perhaps for the first time acknowledging a threat he couldn't physically dominate. "This Academy values excellence," Marvik muttered. "Not fantasy." Michael leaned forward. "Then perhaps it is time the Academy learns that excellence comes in more forms than muscles and tradition." Marvik's antennae twitched violently, but he turned and strode away, tension rippling through the room like a gravity wave. Thrrell sat trembling, unsure whether to feel grateful or terrified. "Apologies if that was too forward," Michael said quietly. "But some attitudes only change when confronted." "No," Thrrell said softly. "Thank you." He had never seen someone defend him with such precision. It felt powerful. It felt like someone had drawn a line in the cosmic dust and said, "Thrrell stands here." Later that evening, their second practice session revealed dramatic improvement. The team moved with sharper coordination. Humans adjusted more smoothly to gravity shifts. Zelthians predicted transitions with new confidence. Thrrell's drone had become both shield and spear, guiding plays and creating opportunities. He adjusted their formations mid-practice, fine-tuned sequences, and even improvised new ones on the spot. His voice over the communication system grew steadier, more commanding, almost instinctively finding the rhythm of leadership. When practice ended, Sophia grinned. "Captain, you're scary good at this." Thrrell flushed violet around the cheeks. "I thank you." As the team dispersed, Michael approached him, holding a datapad. "Thrrell," he said, voice low and serious. "Tomorrow we try a full scrimmage. Your team against a simulated Academy mid-tier squad. Not for humiliation. For data." Thrrell nodded, heart pounding. "I am ready." Michael smiled. "I know you are." But Thrrell had no idea that someone else was listening. And that someone, Marvik, was already plotting a public demonstration meant to shatter Thrrell's fragile momentum. A demonstration that would instead reshape the Academy forever. The recreation dome for the next evening session had already been activated with full lighting when Thrrell arrived, his hover chair gliding across the smooth floor with a low hum. He felt that familiar nervous flutter in his thoracic cavity, a sensation he had grown used to over the last few days. But something about tonight felt heavier, as if the very gravity fields around him knew a storm was coming. The simulated Academy opponent team was already programmed into the system, a mid-tier squad built on standard formation logic, predictable but solid. The scrimmage wouldn't be easy, not with how little time Thrrell's own team had trained. But the goal wasn't victory. The goal was demonstration, coordination, proof. Michael stood near the observation controls, watching Thrrell's approach with a steady smile. "Captain," he said warmly, "your team is inside the prep chamber." They're excited, and a little terrified. Mostly excited. "Terrified is normal," Thrrell replied, though his voice trembled slightly. "I share the sentiment." "That's how you know what you're doing matters," Michael said, tightening a grav bolt on the main console. "If it was easy, anyone would be doing it." Thrrell nodded, letting the words settle deep inside where old doubts once lived. Then he guided his hover chair toward the prep chamber. His team members, Sophia and the other humans, along with the 3 Zelthian underclassmen, looked up as he entered. "Captain," Sophia called, raising a hand in greeting. "Ready to not die?" "That is an overly dramatic description," Neres, one of the Zelthians, muttered. "We cannot die in a simulation." Okay, Sophia grinned. "Ready to not embarrass ourselves?" "That depends on your adherence to formations," Thrrell said, his antennae lifting slightly in amusement. "Now gather closer. We will review the plan once more." They huddled around the holographic projection, and Thrrell explained the sequences they would rely on. Gamma for opening transitions, Beta for midfield stabilization, Delta if they needed to break through heavy pressure, and always, the drone acting as a pivot point linking both species' instincts into a unified strike. The team nodded, focused. Even humans who had laughed through physical mistakes earlier now looked steadier, more grounded. They trusted him. That realization hit Thrrell so hard he needed a moment to breathe. Trust in him. When the scrimmage began, the dome shifted to competitive lighting. Gravity fields activated in pulsing glows. The luminescent orb spawned at the center. The simulation team immediately launched into a standard aggressive approach. 3 forwards cutting fast through a low-gravity corridor, 2 defenders anchoring the high-G zone behind them. "Formation Gamma," Thrrell commanded. His players sprang into motion. Humans dodged unpredictably, creating early disruption. Zelthians positioned themselves with precise, instinctive alignment, and Thrrell's drone swept into place, shadowing the orb's projected path, ready to intercept. The first minute was messy, but when Sophia intercepted a pass and drove the orb back toward midfield, Thrrell felt the energy shift. His drone dove through 2 gravity transitions, feinted left, then transferred the orb to Neres, who completed the maneuver with a clean, calculated pass. The first point wasn't theirs, but they had held their own, and that was enough. "Reset," Thrrell said, adrenaline flooding his system. "You followed transitions well. Now anticipate their support line. They are too slow adjusting." They tried again. The simulation team scored quickly, too quickly, but the moment they did, Thrrell saw the flaw. The simulation forced its defenders to mirror the offensive rhythm, creating a half-second vulnerability each cycle. As the next round began, Thrrell acted. Humans cut diagonally through low-G cluster. Zelthians intercept fallback paths. Drone pressure right flank. They moved. The simulation team faltered. And for the first time, Thrrell's team scored. Cheers erupted immediately, even from the quiet Zelthians. Sophia floated through the air, pumping a fist, and Neres emitted a faint churring sound that Thrrell assumed was laughter. But the most surprising part wasn't the cheering inside the dome. It was the cheering outside it. Thrrell hadn't realized a small crowd had begun gathering along the upper balcony. Students from various levels, drawn by curiosity or rumor or the novelty of seeing a mixed-species team led by the Academy's most unexpected captain. And once the first point landed, a ripple of astonishment spread through them. "Is that Thrrell? He's actually leading them?" I've never seen a drone used like that. Are humans really this fast at adapting? Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to applause. And Thrrell felt something inside him loosen, something tied tightly since childhood. Yet in the midst of those murmurs, another voice cut through. A sharper, colder one. Well, Marvick said from the upper rail, leaning casually while his teammates flanked him. Look at this little performance. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Thrrell saw him instantly. The polished posture, the perfect antennae angle, the smug curve of his mouth. But something else lurked behind that expression, something that hadn't been there days earlier. Uncertainty. Captain, Michael said softly behind Thrrell, focus on your team. You've earned this moment. Thrrell tried, but Marvick wasn't done. Impressive trick, Marvick called down, voice loud enough to reach the whole dome. But simulations are simulations. Real teams need real skill, not drone-assisted pity strategies. Several students murmured disapproval, but Marvick didn't flinch. Tell you what, he continued, since everyone's so entertained by this little experiment, how about a real test? He gestured to his teammates. A scrimmage. My squad versus yours. The crowd buzzed instantly. Even some of Marvick's teammates looked startled. That is not appropriate, Nerys whispered urgently. We have minimal training. We would be destroyed, another Zelthian muttered. Sophia looked at Thrrell. Captain, what do you want to do? Threll's heart hammered. His antennae quivered so much he could barely keep them up. But he remembered something Michael had said the night before. Sometimes the ones who were forced to watch the longest understand the game better than anyone. Slowly, Thrrell guided his hover chair forward until he faced Marvick directly from the center of the dome. Very well, he said, voice steadier than he felt. 3 exchanges. Exhibition rules. Gasps scattered across the dome. Michael didn't intervene. He didn't need to. His presence behind Thrrell was enough. Marvick smirked. Careful, Captain. Wouldn't want your team to break under pressure. Fairness, Thrrell replied calmly, is determined by rules, not by expectations. Marvick's smirk flickered. The scrimmage began. Marvick's team moved with terrifying coordination, fast, strong, practiced. Thrrell's team scrambled, scrambling to stay afloat. In less than 15 seconds, Marvick scored the first point with a ruthless, flawless maneuver. The crowd murmured. A few laughed. Thrrell heard none of it. Reset, he said quietly. Formation Gamma. But this time, follow my drone. His drone shot forward, executing a series of impossible feints. Patterns Thrrell had watched for years, internalized, improved, and now unleashed. Marvick's defenders reacted too late. Sophia dodged exactly where Thrrell predicted the gravity swell would redirect her. Nerys caught the orb, pivoted midair, and passed. Score. The crowd erupted. Marvick's antennae stiffened. Lucky. No, Thrrell said. Calculated. Final exchange. Marvick abandoned strategy. He tried brute force, speed, dominance, the tools that had always worked for him. His team scrambled to match his reckless pace. Thrrell saw the opening instantly. Delta formation now. The humans zigzagged unpredictably. The Zelthian stabilized. The drone sliced through the chaos like a comet, pulling defenders away until a human player, one who had barely understood the game 2 days ago, floated into the open lane. Pass. Catch. Score. Silence. Then an explosion of cheers, so loud it shook the dome's audio dampeners. Thrrell had won, not by brute force, not by traditional skill, but by strategy, his strategy. Marvick froze in the middle of the dome, stunned, antennae angled backward in something close to humiliation. Thrrell expected anger, maybe even mockery, but instead Marvick approached him slowly. Your drone control, he said stiffly, is exceptional, and your gravity transition analysis was unexpected. It was the closest thing to respect Thrrell had ever received from him. You forced us to adjust, Thrrell said gently. Your team is strong. With more time, the outcome might be different. Marvick nodded, accepting the diplomatic out, and stepped away. The crowd began dispersing in a buzz of excitement and disbelief. Students patted Thrrell's shoulder. Others complimented the team. A few seemed stunned into silence. Michael approached last. "Well done, Captain," he said. "I think the Academy just witnessed a paradigm shift." Thrrell stared at his drone, still glowing faintly at his side, and let the moment wash over him. He had done it. He had led a team. He had won. And tomorrow, the real exhibition awaited. News of the scrimmage spread faster than a hyperspace ping. By the next morning, the Academy's halls buzzed like an overloaded comms relay. Thrrell could feel conversations pause when he floated past, antennae flicking as students turned to stare. This time, however, the looks weren't only pity or contempt. There was something else in them now. Curiosity. Some even looked impressed. He navigated the morning corridors on autopilot, still replaying the scrimmage in his mind. Marvik's shocked expression as the winning goal flashed, the crowd's stunned silence, the eruption of cheers, Michael's quiet, proud, "Well done, Captain." The memories felt almost unreal, as if they belonged to someone else. In theoretical astrophysics, the instructor mispronounced his name when taking attendance, and then did a double take, antennae lifting slightly as the realization hit. "Oh, you're the one from the exhibition scrimmage," the professor said absently, then tried to pretend nothing unusual had been said. Behind Thrrell, someone whispered, "That's him, the drone captain." He pretended not to hear, but a small, uncontainable warmth spread through his chest. At midday meal, his usual quiet corner turned out not to be so quiet. As Thrrell approached the dining hall, he hesitated, expecting to have to push through the usual wall of disinterest and avoidance. Instead, he found Sophia waving both arms above her head from a table near the center. "Captain, over here," she called. Several heads turned. Thrrell considered pretending he hadn't heard. But the humans' faces were open, welcoming. Even a few Zelthians at nearby tables watched with something like cautious respect. He guided his hover chair toward the table. Sophia, Neres, and two other team members, Zelthian and human, shifted to make room. "Sit," Sophia said. "We're celebrating not getting obliterated yesterday. Also, kind of celebrating your brain." "That is not how Zelthians phrase it," Neres muttered, though her antennae had a faint upward curve that Thrrell had learned meant she was pleased. "That scrimmage was wild," one of the human junior diplomats said. "I've never seen a game move like that. You were calling out formations so fast I could barely keep up." "I am grateful you did," Thrrell replied, antennae angling forward modestly. "Without your execution, my strategies would be meaningless." "See," Sophia said, pointing at him with her utensil. "Good captain. Gives credit." Threll's antennae lifted, and he allowed himself a small smile. Michael joined them midway through the meal, sliding into an open seat with his own tray. "I see you've become quite the celebrity," he remarked mildly, nodding toward a nearby table where students tried, and failed, not to stare openly. "I am not certain how to process that," Thrrell said truthfully. "Try not to let it go to your head," Michael advised kindly. "Or at least, let it go to your head just enough to hold your antennae a little higher." The others laughed. Threll's antennae did lift of their own accord. Midway through the meal, the Academy's central system chimed with an incoming announcement. Students of Orbital Academy Kidaris, Headmistress Solera's voice echoed, cool and composed. A reminder that tomorrow's intercultural demonstration event will begin at 1,400 hours in Recreation Dome 1. All scheduled participants must report 1 hour early. Attendance for non-participating students is permitted and encouraged, space allowing. That is all. Whispers immediately broke out. "That's your match," Sophia said, eyes widening. "The official one." Threll's hover chair hummed softly as he shifted his weight. "Yes." "Hey," one of the humans said, leaning forward. "Who are we playing against again? Please tell me it's not Marvik. I've only just recovered from the last time I watched him sprint." "Not Marvik," Michael said. "A mid-level academy squad with some coalition exchange staff. Balanced enough to showcase strategy. Challenging enough to be interesting. No one expects domination. Just a good demonstration." "Good," Sophia sighed with theatrical relief. "I'd rather not get turned into a gravity smear in front of the entire diplomatic delegation." You would do fine, Thrrell said. We have improved with each practice. Tomorrow will be an opportunity to demonstrate our methods under proper observation. Nerys nodded. And if we fail, we still disrupt expectations. That alone holds academic value. That's the spirit, Michael chuckled. Disrupt expectations responsibly. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes Thrrell barely remembered. That evening's practice was shorter than usual, more focused. Thrrell kept drills light, not wanting to push his team to exhaustion before the big day. They repeated their opening formations until the movements felt like breathing, then ended with a few relaxed passes and laughter in the low-gravity zones. As they floated off the field, Sophia drifted near Thrrell's chair. "Are you nervous?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Thrrell said, not bothering to hide it. "Very. Good," she said. "Means you care. Just don't let it paralyze you tomorrow. We trust you." Her words settled around him like a protective field. "I will endeavor to be worthy of that," he replied. That night, in his dormitory, Thrrell stared up at his dangling models of coalition ships. His mind danced between tactical possibilities and unfamiliar futures. Futures where he wasn't confined to observation status or quietly funneled into an administrative slot no one cared about. The cracked tablet that had once held all of his secret simulations now lay next to the advanced data device from the human delegation. Side by side, the two screens felt like a visual metaphor for his life. The past he'd been forced into, and the future he might be able to reach. He barely slept. The next day, the academy felt different. A subtle, electric tension hummed in the air. Banners representing multiple species hung in the main corridors. Translation fields were set to maximum clarity. Thrrell saw new uniforms passing through the halls, different from standard academy attire. Coalition officials, visiting observers, and diplomats from various species. When he entered Recreation Dome 1 hour early, the scale of the event finally became real. Tiered seating platforms floated in concentric circles around the central arena, their surfaces already half filled with students, faculty, and guests. Holographic projectors displayed the demonstration schedule, listing performances, presentations, and exhibition matches from across the coalition. Halfway down the list, Thrrell saw it. Adaptive Cosmic Chase Exhibition, Mixed Human/Zelthian Team Demonstration, Captain, Student Thrrell of Kidaris. His name, on a public display, linked with the word Captain. His antennae rose all the way up before he could stop them. Still impressive the second time you read it, huh? Michael asked, appearing at his side. Wait until you see who's in the official guest box. Thrrell followed his gaze toward a raised viewing platform. Ambassador Lerrell stood there, conversing with Headmistress Solera and a cluster of other officials. Among them was a compact, gray-haired human with a subtle coalition insignia and a Zelthian with a serious expression and a databand full of complex symbols. Who are they? Thrrell asked quietly. Directors, Michael said, from the Coalition Adaptive Technologies Division and some partner organizations. They're very interested in what this exhibition could show. Interested in us, Thrrell corrected, then quickly amended, in the team. Michael's smile widened slightly. Yes, in the team, and in the person who designed its strategies. The team arrived shortly after, filtering into the prep area with a mix of excitement and obvious nervousness. Okay, Sophia said, squeezing her hands together. So, I've counted 4 diplomats, 6 academy officials, and what looks suspiciously like a high-ranking coalition person. If I faint, just pretend it was part of the cultural exchange. Fainting is not part of our strategy, Thrrell said, but your acknowledgement of the stakes is accurate. One of the Zelthian students let out a small huff. At least if we embarrass ourselves, we will do so in front of an interstellar audience. That is prestigious. That's one way to look at it, a human said wryly. Thrrell opened his mouth to reassure them, but Headmistress Solera's voice echoed over the dome's audio system. Next on our intercultural demonstration schedule, she announced, we present a collaborative exhibition from Orbital Academy Kidaris and the Earth Educational Cooperative. This event will showcase adaptive athletic technologies and inclusive team strategies in the Coalition's premier zero-gravity sport, Cosmic Chase. A soft murmur swept across the audience. Thrrell glanced around the prep chamber. His team stood waiting, eyes on him, expressions tense but trusting. He realized suddenly that this was what leadership actually felt like. Not standing at the front of a group barking orders, but standing in the middle of uncertainty and being the one others chose to follow anyway. He activated his drone controller. The device hummed to life in his hands. "Remember," he said, voice transmitting into each team member's earpiece, "our purpose is not merely to win. It is to demonstrate possibilities. Move with intention. Support one another. Trust the formations and trust yourselves." Sophia straightened, nodding. Neres lifted her chin. The others rolled their shoulders or adjusted their gear, every motion echoing small acts of courage. "Let's go show them what they've been missing," Sophia said under her breath. They entered the dome to a wash of ambient music and polite applause that quickly grew louder when the crowd realized this wasn't just a novelty act. The announcer highlighted the mixed composition of the team, the drone interface, and Thrrell's role as a student captain with a unique physical condition. Thrrell floated to his designated central position at the edge of the field. His hover chair locked into a stabilization mode that allowed the drone controller full freedom of motion. The drone itself hovered nearby, glowing in a more intense pattern than during practices. The opposing exhibition team took their positions, a balanced mix of Academy athletes and Coalition visitor staff who had trained in Cosmic Chase as part of diplomatic orientation. They looked strong, competent, prepared. The signal tone chimed. "Begin." Gravity fields surged into full configuration, painting the arena with invisible currents. The luminescent game orb flared to life in the center. Thrrell's mind immediately shifted into its now familiar dual mode, seeing both the immediate flow of bodies and the longer patterns forming beneath. The opposing team moved into a cautious, standard formation, clearly instructed not to humiliate the Academy's experimental team, but also not to hold back so much that the demonstration looked fake. "Gamma," Thrrell said calmly into his team's channel. "Soft open. Probe their transitions." His team moved. The humans' slightly unpredictable paths forced small course corrections from the opposition. The Zelthians on his side glided into familiar, stabilizing roles. The drone shadowed the orb without touching it, observing how the opposing defenders responded. The first minute was a dance with no clear lead, and that was perfect. It allowed Thrrell to gather data, to study, to learn. Then he saw it. The opposing team's left defender favored a specific gravity pocket. Their right side offensive runner overcompensated in high G zones. Tiny, almost invisible tendencies, unless you had spent years watching from the sidelines. "Shift to beta," Thrrell ordered. "Drone, pressure left sector. Humans, cut through midfield on my mark. Zelthians, anchor the edges." They executed. The drone darted toward the left, drawing both defenders into an overcommit counter. At the last possible second, Thrrell flicked the controller, sending the orb instead to the right, where Sophia had just launched off a perfectly calculated gravity slingshot. She caught it with a surprised laugh and passed to a Zelthian teammate, who delivered it cleanly into the scoring field. The dome exploded in applause. From the upper platform, Ambassador Lurel's antennae angled upward. The Coalition officials leaned forward, their expressions intent. Thrrell heard nothing but the echo of his team's collective exhilaration through the comms. "Nice call, Captain," Sophia said, trying and failing to sound casual. "Maintain focus," Thrrell reminded them gently, though his own antennae were raised high in pride. This is only the beginning. The exhibition continued. Sometimes the opposing team scored, demonstrating their own skill and ensuring the match remained balanced. Sometimes Thrrell's experimental squad executed maneuvers that left even seasoned observers stunned. A human darting effortlessly through 3 gravity wells because Thrrell had timed the transitions perfectly. a Zelthian player intercepting an anticipated pass because Thrrell's drone had forced the throw a fraction of a second early. As the match unfolded, the audience's reaction shifted from polite interest to genuine engagement. They cheered good plays on both sides, but whenever Thrrell's team pulled off a particularly creative move, the reaction carried an extra edge of surprise and delight. This wasn't pity applause. This was respect. In the final sequence, Thrrell decided to risk something more complex. A formation they had only half practiced, an evolution of Delta that relied on rapid role switching between human and Zelthian players. New pattern, he said, voice calm despite his racing heart. Humans adopt forward rolls. Zelthians support and misdirect. Drone will alternate feints. Trust the timing. Copy that, Sophia replied. Let's do something they'll still be talking about next year. The orb launched. Grav fields hummed. Thrrell's drone wove an intricate path that had no apparent logic until, suddenly, it did. Every twist and feint had shifted defenders one step off optimal positioning. His players slid into the gaps like pieces in a perfectly solved puzzle. The scoring pass came not from the strongest player, nor the fastest, but from one of the quieter humans on the team, someone who had struggled with basic movement during their first practice. Under Thrrell's guidance, that player had been positioned in just the right place, at just the right time, to make a clean, beautiful finish. The signal tone marked the end of the exhibition. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Thrrell sat there in the middle of it all, drone hovering by his side, heart pounding, antennae fully extended. His team clustered around him, some laughing, some gasping, some simply staring at the stands as if they couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. That, Sophia panted, was the most intense PE credit I've ever earned. You were magnificent, Neri said, addressing the group but glancing specifically at Thrrell. Team effort, Thrrell replied. You trusted the patterns. Before he could say more, a small delegation detached itself from the guest platform and glided down toward the arena floor. Ambassador Thrrell, Headmistress Celera, and two officials approached, one human, one Zelthian, both wearing Adaptive Technologies division markings on their attire. Student Thrrell, Ambassador Thrrell said, her formal tone softened by genuine approval. That was an impressive demonstration. You have done your academy and your people credit. Indeed, Headmistress Celera added, antennae betraying her mixed feelings. A creative interpretation of traditional methodologies. Most instructive. The human official stepped forward. He was older than Michael, with short silver hair and a sharp, evaluating gaze. I am Director Halden, he said. Coalition Adaptive Technologies Division. We've been watching your performance very closely, Captain Thrrell. Thrrell's antennae jolted upright. Director, he managed, try not to stammer. Thank you for your attention. Your integration of drone control with team strategy is exceptional, the Zelthian official added. We have research programs exploring remote operation in hazardous environments, complex surgeries, and long-distance exploration. Your demonstrated aptitude suggests you might have a future in such work. Thrrell's world seemed to tilt. A future in advanced coalition-level work, not tucked away in some quiet administrative task, but at the very edge of innovation. I will be honored to learn more, Thrrell said, voice quiet but steady. You will, Director Halden said. We'll arrange a formal conversation after the event. He glanced at Michael and gave a small nod. Your educator here seems to have a talent for spotting potential. Michael's smile was subtle, but his eyes shone with satisfaction. I just provided the opportunity, he said. Thrrell did everything else. As the officials moved on to speak with other demonstrators, Thrrell sat very still amid the slowly dimming roar of the crowd. His team remained near him, some chatting excitedly, others processing the fact that they had just helped shift the way an entire academy, and possibly a coalition division, thought about ability. Sophia leaned on a nearby gravity rail. So, she said, career offer from Interstellar Tech Leadership. No big deal. I am still verifying it is not a hallucination, Thrrell admitted. If it is, Neri's replied dryly, we are all experiencing the same one. Statistically unlikely. Michael stepped closer, resting a hand on Thrrell's shoulder in that now familiar human gesture of support. "Congratulations, Captain," he said. "The game has changed again." Thrrell looked around. The massive dome, the floating seating tiers, the banners, the officials, his team, his drone. For so long, he had been forced to watch others play, forced to sit at the edge of fields where life seemed to happen without him. Now he sat at the center of an arena with the entire academy watching and listening to what he could do. And the most incredible realization of all was this: they had only just begun. If you made it all the way to this point in the story, don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts about Thrrell and his journey. Hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. And stick around, because what happens after an exhibition like this might change more than just one boy's future.